dva, tri. Dobrodošli na tretjem zaključnem dnevu festivala Naprej Forward v Narodni galeriji v Ljubljani. Danes bomo se pogovarjali bolj o globalnem svetu, globalnih težavah in tudi spoznali neke nove prakse iz tujine in govorili v resnici bolj v tujih jezikih oziroma v angleščini. Z nami je kolega Tav Klitgaard iz Zetlanda, iz Danske. En aplavz mogoče na začetku za njega. Thank you, Tav, for being with us. Please tell us what Zetland is and what is your story, and later we will continue.
Thank you, Gašper, and thank you so much for the invitation. Thanks to the festival. My name is Tav. I'm so happy to be here. This is my first real time in Slovenia, and the first thing Gašper tells me is that my hotel is super close to where Slavoj Žižek lives. So I'm kind of like, oh, that's great. I am here to tell you about Zetland, and hopefully my quest is to try and see if I can inspire some of you to not think that people don't want to pay for news, and especially that young people don't want to pay for news. And I have a case from Denmark, which is a different country than Slovenia, but hopefully there's something that kind of rings a bell here. Just very briefly about myself, I am originally a product manager. That means someone working in tech designing and building IT solutions. I have been working with Zetland now for 9 years. Originally, I was actually a product manager in Zetland and built our distribution platforms. And then now I've been the CEO for about 4.5 years. I also used to be a jazz trumpet player. I like to always say that. I'm not very good anymore, but as I normally say, nowadays I don't play jazz trumpet, but I still play jazz. Now it's just JAAS, because it's journalism as a service, right? Get that, journalism as a service. Because that's what we do at Zetland. And I will tell you much more about what Zetland is, but that is me. So when you ask me questions afterwards, please ask me anything. Just know that I'm not a journalist, so don't ask me specific things about how we write our stories, because I will have to say, I don't know. I wouldn't be able to write a Zetland story. Zetland today is actually almost 100 people. This is about half of them who are working out of Copenhagen, Denmark. And I'll get back to where all the other ones are. But for the Danish newspaper, Zetland, what we are is that we are, as I said, a journalism service. And we are digital only, and we're almost exclusively reader revenue focused. So we're almost exclusively funded directly by paying customers. So we don't have any ads. And if you were to ask a Dane on the street what Zetland is, she would say it's an app. That's what people say. People don't say it's a newspaper. No, it's an app. Okay. So the app is a little bit special. It stands out to our competition. And this is just a video about from how it can look. You'll notice a lot of colors, big images. You'll always also notice, if you're sharp, that everything we have in the app is both available in text and in audio. So sometimes it's a podcast player, and sometimes it's a digital newspaper. There's a lot of interactivity. Here we just saw the contribution section, where we have a lot of actually engagement from our readers. And here you see that it can also be a podcast player. And the general idea is that we publish few things. We publish only around 4 articles per day. And we publish everything, as I said, in both text and audio. Text and audio. We also cover both very like first-line news, like current affairs. We do that, but that's not the prime thing we're selling. The primary thing we're selling is we're selling inspiration. We're selling information about the world, not necessarily what happened today or yesterday, but what has happened over the last week or month or maybe even decade. Because actually sometimes that's more important than what Trump just tweeted yesterday. I want to get back to more basis about what we're actually publishing today, because we've now been publishing for 8.5 years, and we've learned a lot, and we've made hopefully all the mistakes that there are to make. But let me just rewind a little bit to what happened back in 2015, where I, together with 4 journalists, had the privilege to sit down and think about what is a modern media. What does a modern media look like? We were not coming from, well, we all came, or all the journalists came from legacy news organizations. I came from tech. But we didn't have a printing press in the basement. We didn't have a print paper that we had to publish the day after. We basically started from scratch, reimagining what is a newspaper, or what is news. And basically what we came up with was that news is an experience, right? Journalism has no value until it meets a consumer. So there is the content, and then there is the distribution. And those two do not work without each other. There is no such thing as an article without the distribution layer. Journalism needs to be mediated. And those two things, they create an experience. So it's not about the article, it's about the experience. That may sound totally fluffy and obvious. It was a pretty strong thing for us to realize. The other thing we realized is that if you're able to create that experience, that's actually worth a lot, because experiences is really something that people want to pay for. Now, adding to that, it's not enough. Adding to that, we wanted to enrich that experience with personal engagement. So we wanted journalism to be told by human beings that I could trust, and that could be my friend and tell me a story. And those two things together, combined with some marketing magic, which actually the marketing magic has to do with the personal engagement, that would be able to create a business. And obviously the business model for such a product is a subscription business, because it's a business model that fits perfectly with the close relationship you get out of great experiences combined with personal engagement. Okay? So the other thing we did was that we said, we are not legacy media, we are something else. And there was a couple of reasons why we did that. One is we needed to create a movement. We needed to say to the Danes, yes, there's a lot of quality journalism in Denmark. No, we don't have any corruption problems. Well, not a lot of corruption problems. But this is different. It is quality journalism. Yes, we already have a lot of that, but this is different. And this is different, and we had to tell them in all the ways that this would be different and what the vision was. And I just think it's very important, because I see so many media entrepreneurs, and they have, because they're journalists, they have this dream: I want to create a digital newspaper, and it has to have a headline, and then it has a lead-in, and then a first paragraph. And I think it's just important to, if you don't stand out, you don't stand out, and there's nothing. Why should people listen to you? You have to stand out. You have to provide something new, and journalism is really not new. So there needs to be something new to it. Anyway, that was the starting point. We could allow ourselves to reinvent this, and we had kind of a bold idea that we wanted to stand out in many ways. We wanted to create a movement. And so what happened was that we managed to scrape together a little bit of money, partly from around 1,000 Danes who were willing to pay a little bit of money to say, okay, we support the project. Then we got a little bit of money from the government and a little bit of money from some investors. And then we scrambled, And then one evening or night in 2016, we launched the product. And we weren't a lot of people. Actually, I think these were all, I mean, there were more people than this, but it wasn't, it was a small thing. And there's a young version of me, actually, because back then I was also the programmer, so kind of programming the DNS to go live. And so we did that back in 2016. And we have since then been publishing news as a daily media, as a daily habitual news outlet that people consume, and then they will tell their parents that I am reading a newspaper. Because it's the same user need. Okay, I'll get back to that. Just a little bit, because I can't stand here and say this is a fairy tale without also showing you that we're actually profitable. And these are just some very high-level numbers. We're just about 42,000 paid memberships. Denmark is a little bit more than double the size of Slovenia. But even though it's such a big population, the number is actually still pretty big. We are the second largest digital news outlet in Denmark. 50% of our paying subscribers are in the 20s and 30s. That's very unusual. I don't know the numbers in Slovenia, but that's very unusual. In Denmark, we have a very young demography. We're not a newspaper for young people, but contrary to legacy newspapers, we are a newspaper for the entire population. As I said, we publish everything we do. We publish it both in audio and text, because it should not be up to the consumer to. I mean, sometimes you're in your car, sometimes you're in your chair. Depending, sometimes there is things happen in your life. Sometimes you want to consume it via audio. Sometimes text is better. That should be up to you. It should not be something that has to do with us. So we publish everything both in text and audio. Turns out for us that more than 80% choose audio. When given the choice between text and audio, more than 80% thinks that audio is a better way to consume the content that we're producing. As I said, we don't publish a lot. We publish around, and then now I calculate it in minutes, but we publish around 27 hours of content every week. And actually the average member consumes 7 hours, and that's the average. It's something that I'm insanely proud of, that this is actually a newspaper that people actually use. They actually consume the product. And so you can also see that there is not a lot of content being produced that is not consumed, which is very important for the business model. Speaking of business model, this is just the high-level fiscal numbers or results. You'll see the blue line is the total revenue. It's growing, and it's still growing, and I will do some breaking news for you today that it will also grow this year. These are old numbers from 23. But we are able to continuously grow our total revenue. We're also growing our expenses, and that's because we're investing everything that we make into hiring more journalists, hiring more developers, trying out new things, and we constantly fail a lot. So that's super expensive. You'll also see that the yellow line is kind of leveling, and that's something that's a reason why we are now starting to look outside of Denmark, because the thing is that Denmark is a very small country, and that yellow line will plateau, and we think that there is something for us to do in other countries as well, and I'll go back to that. The red line is basically the bottom line, and you'll see that it has been above 0 since 2019, which also means that for us, the investors that believed in us back in 2015, we've actually been able to make some money and actually get their money back. We haven't paid anything to them yet, because we've now said we could pay you the money back, or we could invest it again. How do you say? Shouldn't we invest it? And luckily they're like, yeah, this is a great place to be an investor. So that's great. Of course, when you can show results like that, it becomes a little bit easier talking to investors. So that's a success story that we are actually making money for it. And again, the money primarily comes directly from consumers, which is what makes me happy and proud, because my customer is not Coca-Cola or whatever. It's actually the people consuming the news. And that's a huge difference. I've never worked in a news outlet where the real customers was actually the advertisers. But for us, we don't have any other agendas than actually giving a good experience to the consumer. There's nothing else we want to do. Except, would some say, are you not incentivized to please the government? And yes, in some ways we are, because you'll see that 14% of our revenue is support. It's a Danish public media grant that Gašper told me is being worked on. Maybe something similar here. Okay, but we are happy. We are happy receivers of public government support, which all private Danish media are, at least all quality media. And then there is the 9%, that's a Danish word, it means other. So we sell books, we sell all sorts of stuff. We sell tech, and that's the other. So this is our business model. It's very simple. It's making a product that's good enough so people actually want to pay for it. Okay, so that's kind of who I am, what Zetland is, and what brings me to think that I can stand here and be an example or an inspiration maybe for some of you. Now let me dive a little bit more deeper into what is it we do. We see ourselves as a news provider, and as such we speak into the history of the free press, of being there because of the democracy and strengthening the public debate. And as such, we owe a lot to this guy. And if I showed this image in Denmark, people would be, oh yeah, that's good old Grundtvig. You probably don't know him. But this guy is probably the most famous Danish philosopher. Well, there was someone called Kierkegaard. But okay, Grundtvig was a great guy. And he lived a long time ago. And he was a songwriter, which also means I love him. He wrote an insane amount of songs, and he was super productive. He was also a priest. And he was actually a part of building the Danish nation. He co-wrote the first Danish constitution. And he had some ideas about education, specifically about schools. And one of the greatest thing I think he ever said was, when you want to teach people something, you have to. It sounds wonderful in Danish. Of course, I can't translate it, but this is the translations. When you want to teach people something or make people understand something, first you engage them, and only then you enlighten them. And that's actually one of the first principles of Zetland today. And so his idea of actually building a society and building a person was that you need two things. You need information. You need to know about the world. What's going on in the world? What is the world? And then the other thing is community, or a being togetherness. That's what creates a nation, and that's what creates a human being. He was very nationalistic and also like all sorts of strange ideas. But I really believe in that. And I think that is what we're doing with Zetland. And if you translate that to a news service, what we do is, traditionally, I think news outlets have been very focused on the first one, information. As long as we just tell people correct information about the world, then everything is good. And I think no, and probably it hasn't ever been true, because if you don't engage people, it doesn't really matter, because they don't understand it. You have to first engage them, and then you can enlighten them. This is also the reason why in all Danish public schools, still, they all have gyms, probably they also have that here, because his vision is also, if you don't have a healthy body, you cannot be enlightened. There's also a truth ringing to that, I think. Okay, but that's Grundtvig, and the idea of actually how do you build a person and how do you build a human being? Information and a feeling of connectedness, like something collective. And that's what we do in our news. We're trying to provide these two things, information, true information about the world, but then we always understand that it doesn't matter if it's correct, if it's reporting on the right stories. if it's not, if it isn't engaging, it doesn't matter, because people won't. First, they won't read it. Second, if they read it, they won't understand it. So it has to be always from we call it a member-first perspective. Like, what would actually be what would be an engaging topic, and how could we tell this story in an engaging way? So it's not that we are doing entertainment, but we're just always trying to be engaged. And people can feel that, and people really like that. Again, back to this very simple equation, that is what we're still doing. Me being a tech guy and now being the CEO of the company, I'm always talking about the distribution part, because that's that's what I know about. But it is very important in the company. We have a lot of developers employed, not as many as we have journalists, but there's a lot of them. And that's because it's the combination of these two things. And again, the content cannot stand alone. It needs to be distributed in an engaging manner, which is what Grundtvig said. We have 6 principles that we always follow, and I don't want to go through all of them, but the first principle is called "We are our members." And that is also why we don't call our members subscribers, even though they are subscribers. They pay a monthly fee. But we like the word members, and it's because it means that you're part of the project. This is not a product you buy, it's something you're actually a part of. And that's something that's very important for us, to engage people. And it's much easier to say than to do. So I'm just going to give you a few examples of how we do it. One of the easy to understand examples is that we gather people physically at events. So this is the biggest theater in Denmark, where we then do live journalism. And of course, it's a product. They buy a ticket, we deliver a service. But it's also an event where they can see each other. They can even talk to each other. There's always a party afterwards, so they can even get drunk together and dance together if they want to. But they kind of meet each other and get a feeling of we're together, and all the journalists are there, so they can meet them in the bar and all of that. The other thing we do, we do a lot of things, but I don't have time to go through all of them, but an important thing that our employees always talk about is this crazy thing that we ask them to actually talk to the customers. Have you heard anything like that? We do that several times a year. We actually give all our employees a phone number and say, call her, call him, and ask them about, maybe they're members of Zetland, maybe they're not, ask them about the role of journalism in their life. Ask them about the feelings that they get out of when they experience great journalism. Ask them if they are not member, maybe they have been members previously. Ask them about why did they cancel the subscription. Ask them about what is it that you're looking for from a news provider. Simple questions. And then all employees, they speak to this one person for a long time, 30 minutes, 20 minutes, and they come back super engaged, and they all are discussing, well, I had this woman, she was both a bodybuilder and a philosopher, and isn't that crazy? And all these stories about the place that journalism has in these people's lives. Myself, I call a member every week. In reality, it's probably more like every second week. But I have every Tuesday in my calendar, call a member, and I have this system where I just get a phone number in. And all of this is just to say that's what we do in tech. We always talk to the customer. That's on page number 2 in all books, and you've probably heard it 1,000 times. It's just that no one does it. We do it, and we always get something out of it. It's always cringe, and people don't want to do it because it's awkward. Hello, my name is Tav. I'm from a paper. Maybe you know it. But it's really, really worth the time to basically speak to people. We also, of course, look at more broad data of surveys and stuff, and some of the biggest thing that people say that they want from us is that they want us to challenge their assumptions. They want us to be different. They want us to tell them something that they did not know that they wanted. And coming back to breaking news, that is actually not what breaking news is doing. Breaking news is doing the same as telling them everything that they can see on Twitter. Well, they already read it on Twitter. Or X, or Blue Sky. So that's not what they want out of a newspaper. They want a personal story told by someone that they trust and that they almost regard as their friend. That is what they want from us. They don't want an institution talking to them like a robot. They want a real human being that, with all the flaws and whatever that human beings have, that tell them a story about something that's really important and engaging in the world. And then they also tell us, don't make me cry. Well, maybe sometimes make me cry, but don't make me want to just hibernate. Like, there has to be some hope. There has to be something that I can do in my life. So, for instance, when we report about the climate crisis, it's super easy. Or Donald Trump, it's super easy to just say, okay, this is fucked. We give up. But there has to always be hope, and there is always hope. And that's really something that people request from a news service. That's something that I see that journalism can actually do. Journalism is something that can give people hope. It's not that we should tell happy stories and only tell about new animals being born in the zoo or something. We can definitely tell about Gaza, but we have to not leave people in a place where they just go into the bed and cry. We have to do better than that. And that is really what they tell us that they expect us to do and that they want us to do. And when we fail, and we often do, they churn. They're out of there. They don't want to pay for that. So they're paying for a service that does not make them in a bad mood. It's pretty obvious, right? And again, it's not because we're entertainment. It's journalism about Gaza, but it cannot be sad. It needs to be engaging. The last thing I want to say of all these things about engagement is actually basically the technology that has been super, super important to us, which is audio. So back when we started in 2016, we were just standard text and images on the internet. And then people started asking us, I really want to consume this, but I have a job. I've been looking into a computer screen for 10 hours today. Could I please not look into my phone and read your articles? And we were like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so how about audio? Audio is super convenient. Maybe that would be a better way. And actually what we found out is that our stories lend themselves very well to audio because they were already narrative journalism. And so we started doing audio very early back in 2017. And then we quickly realized, okay, this is our chance. This is where we should go all in because this is what people want. You saw the number that now more than 80% actually prefers audio. And it's not because the text version is bad. It's just because audio is amazing. And again, I think audio has three things to it. It's just if any of you are considering maybe is audio something that people want? Well, the data from Denmark, and unless Danes are completely crazy people, my bet is that Slovenians also like audio because of three reasons. One is convenience, and it's easy to imagine. This situation I could not read a text article in this situation, in the car, in the train, on the bicycle, in the kitchen, while I'm vacuuming. There's just a convenience to audio that is unbeatable. It is super convenient. Nowadays, everyone just have AirPods all the time. We have our phones. There's no technical barrier, at least not in Denmark. So that's one thing, convenience. It's super, super important. And that's where most news publishers stop. Okay, audio is super convenient, great, let's get a robot to do it in audio. Wrong, I think, because the second thing that audio has is that it's a wonderful storytelling medium. It's just a richer medium than text. You can use emotions, you can use speed, you can use your voice and with all its flaws. I speak too fast, yes, but that's me. You can use music to really convey messages. You can sometimes leave out 2 paragraphs because you can put in a piece of music. You can use audio effects. There's so much more you can do to storytelling. Robots are actually also pretty good at that now. So okay, also check with AI sound for that. It's still not as good, at least not in Danish. But then the third thing that I think audio has to it is personality. It's a super intimate medium. It's very much easier to convey your personality when you're in people's ear. You can use your voice. I mean, there's a reason why I'm talking to you now and not writing to you. It's because it's just a more intimate communication method. And that is where I think the robots are still not at. So as I said before, what we aim to do is to be a human being, a person, almost like a friend or someone you know, telling you a story. And that is something that a robot, I will almost say never, will be able to do. I didn't say never. And I think that's kind of like the last frontier, which is why we are totally doubling down on now. More human, more personal, more flaws, more mistakes, more humbleness, more... Because we don't want perfect, right? A robot is perfect, and that's not very trustworthy to be perfect, because a human being is not perfect. And that's what we want. We want to admit when we're in doubt. People really respond positively to that in our data. It's every time we tell them about a mistake we made, we get 100 new subscribers. I'm not kidding. It's the most powerful conversion engine we have. Okay, so that's the 3 things about audio. I encourage everyone working with quality narrative journalism to at least not say audio is not for me. Then there is the thing about the young audience. As you saw in our numbers, about half of our paying members are in their 20s or 30s, and that is young in this industry. Sometimes I hear, well, it's impossible to sell journalism to young people because they don't care about society. They don't understand politics. Bullshit. Of course they do. Of course a 22-year-old cares a lot about society. Maybe she doesn't really know that much about society yet, but are you crazy she cares? Also, a 22-year-old it doesn't have to be fast. It has to be told in a different way than The Guardian was telling stories 20 years ago. But it's not the subject. It's not that Gaza is not interesting for a 22-year-old. It's just you have to be engaging in a different way. You have to be, in our solution to it, human. You have to tell a story the way that stories are being told on Instagram or TikTok. Then, well, yeah, but not because of the speed, but because of the personal relationship that creators on TikTok are great at giving. Then I think it also goes for the young audience, at least in Denmark, and maybe I don't know, but we might be some years longer in that development than you, because Danes are such, we don't care about institutions. I don't know the situation in Slovenia, but there's definitely a movement going from institutions to persons. Whereas in the old days, as long as it said we're the public broadcaster and I'm wearing a tie, okay, well, that's trustworthy. That's not the case anymore. We are moving towards persons. The persons are the ones that we trust. We trust human beings because we don't know any more about, machines and what are really the ideas behind these institutions. Also, we connect to people, and because we're getting so used to the way that the internet works, where everything is about connectedness. Well, that means that our trust is going more and more towards persons, people that I feel, she's my friend, I know her, I trust her, more than I trust the public broadcaster. Even though, hopefully, I still trust the public broadcaster. And then the last thing is this realization that for me, and I'm not young, but more so for the younger people we see that very obviously very clearly in our data. Journalism is an experience. It's not an article. It's not journalism. Well, it's something that has to give me something. I have to get inspired. Then that's something that I really want to come back to tomorrow again. If it feels like homework, I'm not paying for homework. Okay, so that was as short as I could do it around, what is actually the content. I've now been talking for 40 minutes, but I'll just round this off with the future, because that's a great place to end before we start opening up. We have a strategy at Zetland, and this is how it looks. I call it the rainbow ice strategy. I don't know, do you have this ice where there's 3 colors? Ice cream? Okay, and they're all blended on the plate. So this is the ice, the rainbow ice strategy, because all of this kind of blends on the plate when it melts. But we are operating like Zetland Bombastic. We think we're far from done with Zetland. And also, the Danish market is a great market, and we think that there's a lot of room for us to grow. There's a lot of product development that we have to do in tech, but also in journalism, and there's a lot of, probably, mistakes still to be made. It's a big thing for us. We're far from done, but we now have the capacity to do other things. We now have the capacity to go into other countries. I'll get back to that. And we have actually also created an incubator, mostly because we think it's a cool name, but also because we can see, actually looking back, that we have a history of actually figuring out new stuff. And maybe if we have the capacity to create new revenue streams, that's great. And one thing we did last year was that we came up with this user need that all our journalists have of getting their interview into text and transcribing it. And the products that were out there, they sucked. They were not usable in Danish. We couldn't do it. And then we built a tool ourselves. And when we tested it in our own newsroom, it was literally tears in the eyes of the journalists, because now their life changed. And me being a product developer, I'm like, okay, well, there's a professional service that makes people cry. I think there's a product here. And so we built it out to a product. And now Good Tape is legally a subsidiary of Zetland, but it's a tech company that we own as a media company, and that means that the revenue and the whole scalability of such a tech company, which is globally scalable, is something that is actually in many ways powering our journalism, which I think is just beautiful. So I'm super proud of that, and it's like these days and weeks and hours, it's just like growing like a true a tech startup. So that's wonderful. We also are licensing our technology away to other countries. So we have a pretty big tech department in-house, and of course we are servicing ourselves and have been doing that since 2016. In 2019, we sold the platform to a Swedish company, and then this year we opened it. We launched for an international magazine called Foresight, and then next year we will open our own product in Finland. And actually, I can say that this is an Austrian company that just bought our technology also, because people are looking at our numbers and saying, "Oh, that might work in Austria." And then we are like, "Yeah, I agree. We don't have time or money or energy to do it, but you can license our technology," which is great for us, and it's great for Austria, hopefully. For us, Finland is where we are working right now. We, for many reasons, thought that, okay, well, if it works in Denmark, Finland is probably the lowest hanging fruit to prove that it can work outside Denmark. And so what we did in this fall was that we created the vision. We told Finland, we think we can do something for journalism in Finland, but we cannot do it if the population doesn't want it. So we told them, you have to support us, and you actually have to pay 100 euros to show us that you want it. And it turns out that 10,000 Finns did that. So they wanted to pay, so they paid 100 euros for a product that did not exist and was actually many months from existing. This was back in September. And we are now launching on January 15th, and we just hired 20 journalists in Helsinki. And it's all very exciting and all very, because it's not really break-even yet, but it looks like we are actually pretty close to being break-even already before we launch. So that's super exciting for us. And of course, if it works in Finland, maybe it could work in Sweden. I don't know. And so just, this is the brag slide, just to say that once you have proven a business model regarding journalism, this is the journalism, that's the red one, well, then you have a platform to stand up on. And what we have done is that we are now also selling technology, that's the purple one. and we are opening up in other countries. And that means you can create a slide like this, which is something that investors like, because we can show a 40% revenue growth year over year, and we are actually pretty sure about this is Danish kroner, but we're pretty sure about the 40% top line growth this year, which is amazing. And then actually also pretty sure about next year already, because this is subscription. So that means people have actually already paid for it. So that's what we are trying to build on top of that. So just to sum everything up, Zetland Media is now no longer just a Danish newspaper, but these are our aspirations. We are the second largest, if you measure it only on digital-only subscribers in Denmark right now. That's not fun. We need to be number one, right? So soon we should be the largest. The largest has just been sold from a Belgian owner to a Norwegian owner this week. That's interesting. Then we see a lot of what I call Zetland-shaped holes in international markets. Obviously, we want to fill them. Maybe we do it ourselves, maybe we do it together with other partners. And then we continue to innovate outside the core. I don't know what it means, but that's the purpose of innovation. And that's it. And this is where you can find us and me. And then I'm pretty sure that Gašper has some questions, and maybe even some of you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tav. Please. So, how much money do you want for your license? No, I'm just...
Well, how about 100 million euros?
Okay, that's a topic for another office. But yeah, actually, you mentioned very at the end that 100 euros Finns were paying for the prepaid subscription.
Yes.
But actually, how much is your monthly fee for Zetland in Denmark, original? Like?
So in Denmark, it's about 18 euros, like for the normal price. Then there's a student discount and all. But 18 euros is the standard price per month.
18?
18.
So that's like Netflix?
It's a little bit more expensive than Spotify.
Little bit, yeah. And you get 4 contents per day, you said?
Yes, although if you asked a member, that would not be what she would say. That doesn't matter, because what matters is that we fill the user needs of tell me the most important things that are going on in the world and inspire me to something. It doesn't really matter. Like, nobody counts the number of articles.
Yeah.
But yes, normally we publish 4 units.
Do you have maybe? You said the statistics is like that 25% is their listening, right? Their stories.
No, more than 80.
More than 80.
Yeah.
So, okay, sorry, I mixed up. Okay, and who is reading the stories?
Well, everyone, because sometimes you don't have your earphones, or sometimes you feel like reading.
No, I mean reading the audio ones. So the author, the journalist,
who is telling the stories.
Yeah,
yes, yeah, that's a good. So again, I told you about the 3 things with audio, and given that point 3 was the personality, it's great to convey the personality. It follows from that obviously it's the journalist, it's the author of the story that tells the story. Mm-hmm. So it's not a robot, it's not a voice actor. It's the person who wants to tell the story. Mm-hmm. And it's not a journalist who writes a story and then prints it and goes into the studio and reads it. No, it's someone telling a story, and that's super important.
Do you maybe also engage members of the people who are reading using the app? That they maybe sometimes tell the story, and that you would engage like that?
We sometimes ask people to, especially on our live events, we normally always have a member on stage to tell a story. But the daily articles, it's very important for us that we get input from the members, but we're the journalists, like we're the professionals. It's not that this is just an open... It's not Facebook, right? It's not open for everyone. We curate what's important. So yes, sometimes there will be members as a source, and we use the members to find sources. But it's not that just because you are a member, you get to read the stories aloud. No, that's not how it works.
I'm asking because maybe it would be interesting that the member could also tell some that would attract.
I'm sure that they would want to do it, but again, it's very important for us that
have standards. Yeah.
No, but it's the person. It's a person who tells the story, and that person wrote a manuscript, and now she's in the studio telling the story to us. So it's not. It's also never me, because it would be strange. Why would I go into the studio and read an article? It's the one who created the story that tells it.
Of course, the floor is open. Please, Urška, just a second that we get.
Hi. I was wondering in what way you use social media for advertising. Do you encourage the users to go on your platform to subscribe? I mean, what's your relationship to social media?
Yeah, great. We have a great relationship with social media, even though it is hard, and it has become much harder lately. In the old days, when Facebook worked, Facebook was such a wonderful thing for journalism, I think, because what we built was this system where if you were a paying member, like we have a very hard paywall. If you go to Zetland DK, there is no entrance. But if you were a paying member, you can still do that. You can share the article, and if you share it, you get your own personal URL. And when you share that on Facebook, all your friends can read the article for free. And that was a great way to build what we call top funnel, because people would want to share the article because they knew that all their friends could read it, and then next time they were playing badminton, they could maybe discuss the article, and that was great. Now that Facebook has died, or at least has died for people under 60, people don't do that anymore. They don't share articles, which is tough for us. And so we are spending a lot more time now actually telling the stories. So we are producing a lot of content mostly for TikTok and for Instagram Reels, because we found out that those two platforms are wonderful in actually telling people stories. So I think many people, at least my age and above, think that TikTok is a place for 15-second dance videos. Maybe it was once, but now it's actually a wonderful platform for actually telling stories. And what we have found is that the TikTok algorithm really likes quality news, because there isn't a lot of it out there. And it turns out that people actually want it. So the TikTok algorithm really likes our content. So we spend a lot of time there. The problem, of course, with TikTok is that they don't work with links. So it's very, very hard to measure. So it's really top funnel for us. But we think that it is, both from just a media standpoint, it's important that someone is telling the truth on TikTok. And hopefully that the algorithm kind of supports that. But then, of course, also, we can, I wouldn't say easily, but we can sometimes get half a million views on a TikTok story or a TikTok video. We can never get 500,000 to read an article. So it's brand knowledge for us, and it's very hard to measure, unfortunately. That was the beauty of Facebook, that everything was measurable.
Just a follow-up question about TikTok. Do you then, I know you said that you're not originally journalist, but you still know your orientation of journalists. Do you, when you do a story for the TikTok, do you do it specially? We will do this kind of news only for the TikTok, or it is connected also with the story for your app, or you know what I mean? Well, it's the special production. Okay, we will do this story for TikTok, but maybe we will not use it at the...
No, it is special productions, but when it works best for us, it's based on an article, because then someone knows something. Otherwise, we kind of have to start from scratch. But it is a fully separate production. And to be honest, we're also still learning, because sometimes We get 500,000 views. Sometimes we get 2,000 views, and we don't really understand why. And we're trying to figure out still, I guess, like everyone in the world, is how that works. There are some things. For instance, we have a very, very strong format, which I told you before, that the most converting things that we can do is when we tell about ourselves. Like when there is behind the scene content, it's super strong. When we kind of show, here's the developer. You never hear about him in the stories, but his name is Peter, and he's a great guy, and he does stupid stuff. That's great content, actually. And those things are really, really popular on TikTok because, again, people want also to see the faces, and that's the problem with audio. We like faces also. So we're also doing more and more stuff now on YouTube, also because YouTube just surpassed Spotify as the most popular podcast platform. So what people are doing now is that they're switching on YouTube, and then maybe I'll watch something, but actually maybe the phone will just be over here, and I'll just play it back through my speakers. So it's a great podcasting platform now. So that's also something we're.
Mojca? Pardon, Špela. Sorry.
Yeah. Yes, I have two questions now. One just popped up when you talked about the developer. So is this really the developer? Is it, now I lost the word. Is it relevant? Is this really relevant, from the news point of view? Okay, it's relevant from the engagement point of view, but how is this different from other, stuff on TikTok? Yeah. That is the first question. Yeah. And the second is about what is the ratio between journalists and, IT developers, all the production stuff.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from.
This is the second. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, let me begin with the second one because that's easy. It depends on who you count, but I think we are probably 38 in the editorial team, and that means that we are probably around 22 in everything else. That's developers. It's also me, bookkeeping, whatever we have. So that's it. The other question, is it relevant? Obviously not if you look at news criteria. What the name of your developer, or last week our most popular Instagram post was about the air refresher in the office. That because there was some silly story to it. And obviously it's not important when you look at news criteria. But what is important is that Zetland is not some strange institution with a logo. No, we are actually real people coming to work, and there's bad air in the office, and that makes us do stupid stuff, and that makes us come closer to people. So no, that's not relevant. But what is relevant is that we have a connection to people, which means that when we tell important stories, they will listen to us and they will understand it. Again, coming back to Grundtvig, there is the information, but you cannot enlighten people if you have not first engaged them. So in that sense, yes, the story about the developer, that is engagement. And once you have engaged people, you can enlighten them.
Mojca.
Yes, thank you. It was a really interesting presentation. I have a few questions. Maybe first to follow up Špela's question. I want to know how do developers and journalists work together? Is it important that the developers understand the stories, what the journalists want to do, and the other way around? Because I feel that in Slovenia sometimes it's a huge gap between journalistic part of the company and the marketing and developer part of the company. Yeah. And we are usually as journalists seen as somebody who is making costs.
Yes.
And so how do you work together?
Yeah, I love that question because that's something that's very close to my heart, coming from the IT side and now working in journalism. Well, there's a very short answer to that question, which is yes. That's insanely important because if you think about, I don't understand why people would work in a company and do great stuff, but then they don't understand how that is connected to the product. I don't understand, to be honest. I've never worked in a legacy media company, but I've of course visited many of them, and it's always like the IT department. Oh, well, that's on 4th floor, and I don't really know their names, and they're actually not. They're always lazy. I think they're not building the right stuff, and the app doesn't work, and it hasn't worked for a week. I don't like them, and they are not coming to the company party, and if they do, I'm not talking to them. So I'm not really making fun. Like that's how it is. At least in the bigger Danish, it's like seriously, they're not invited to the company party. Isn't that insane? Okay, that's my. But yes, obviously, because again, if you're serious about content plus distribution is experience, then if you take out the distribution part of the equation, then you have nothing. So I really sincerely believe that there is no journalism without the mediation. And back in the days, that was kind of easy because there was a clear understanding. There was technical limitations. It has to fit this piece of paper, and okay, there's only so much we can do. Sorry, there are no colors on this page. But now we can do everything. We can do so much when it comes to interaction, when it comes to being joyful. We can delight people, and that is insanely important. Is it relevant? Like I just answered before, no, but it's really, really, really important. And so it begins. So there's many things in that. Don't ever call your developer an IT department. I mean, it's just a language thing. You have to be able to recruit great people. Nobody wants to work for someone that doesn't really value their work. So that's one thing. Maybe we have a CEO who is a techie. That works when we're recruiting people, because we can say, well, you can be the CEO one day if you're like. And then of course, having everyone in the same room, insisting that we eat lunch together every day at 12, unless you're out doing reporting. And it's not okay to not sit next to the developers. Every morning we sing a song from the Danish Cultural Songbook, which consists of 650 songs, many of them written by Grundtvig. And when we sing, the developers are just as bad as the journalists. I mean, it sounds horrible. It really is really odd, because there's no it's a cappella. It really sounds awful. But we do that every morning at 8:45, and what happens is that everyone is the same now. We sing, and once we're done singing, people are always like, "Oh, okay, well, what are you doing today?" So we have these ceremonies to bring people together, because that is important.
Can you imagine this in Slovenian media? I was imagining. Please, Mojca.
Just maybe another question about financing. Did I understand you correctly? You started with getting money from crowdfunding, or?
Yes. So in Denmark, you mean? Yes. So basically, we wanted to do something big. I mean, we wanted to stand out, as I showed. So most media entrepreneurs, at least in Denmark, but I would say all over the world, they think, if we're like 2 or 3 of us, and we will get a room in a basement, and we'll just start writing articles, and then the world will really discover how amazing we are. That's not how we thought it should be done. So we thought, okay, this is going to be super expensive. We need to hire 25 people, and that will cost a lot of money from day one, because it takes time to build a subscription business. So yes, what we did was that we wanted to approach investors, but obviously, you have to have some data. So we did a crowdfunding campaign and got I think a little more than 1,000 Danes to actually pay. So that wasn't really for the money, but it was more to show we're not 5 crazy people believing in this. There's actually 1,000 Danes. It's more than just our friends, a little more. So that worked, and then it was kind of I mean, it's always a struggle and it's always chaos. I've done this a few times now in my career. It's always chaos to start something up. But we managed to do that with a little bit of funds from the crowdfunding. That convinced some investors that they were not completely stupid to put some money into this. And then there was a government grant that we could apply for and got. And then we thought we had 2 years of runway. And we thought, okay, after 2 years, we will be profitable. And it took 4 years, so we had to get more money.
Just one more. It will be a short one. I just want to know, you're now going in other countries. Why not English market?
Why not the English market?
Yeah.
I would rather answer the question, why Finland? Because we're not saying why not. We're not saying no English markets, but we're of course looking for the lowest hanging fruit. And Finland is a very special market that has some traits that we like. It's a very consolidated market where there isn't a lot of quality newspapers. There's basically only one. I mean, not with all due respect. And then there's a lot of great regional papers, but a national newspaper, there is basically only one. And I think that's very attractive. There's just Finns have this feeling that it's not going very well with journalism. We are losing our trust and we want to do something about it. They also is a fairly wealthy nation, so they can pay for stuff. So there's a lot of reasons why Finland would be great. English speaking is, I mean, you could also have asked, why are you not then just publishing in English when, you know, all Danes know English and all Finns know English? And again, I would come back to Grundtvig and say, well, what we're doing is we're trying to build a community around this. And me being a Dane, you guys being Slovenians, yes, I understand English, but I feel much more connected to something that is in Danish. So it absolutely has to be in the local language. That's also a great, I mean, for us, it's great because New York Times is not opening in Denmark anytime soon. Nobody wants to touch such a small market.
Mojca?
Yeah, I was wondering, with more personality-driven news, is there ever a risk of like a certain journalist becoming too prominent in your content? So someone becomes the face of Zetland. Do you have to limit exposure? Is that like a type of risk management, or do you embrace it and just say that's actually something we strive for?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I always get asked that question. Isn't it like you invest a lot in building up personalities and characters that are publicly known? What if she quits? It hasn't happened yet, and I think one of the reasons is that we're not English, because if like there's no chance, there's no Substack in Denmark. There's no chance that a Danish writer, well, let's say there are like 5 creators in Denmark that can actually live from doing it. It's not like our most popular journalist, I guess, a guy called Frederik. He has a very big, following, but he would not be able to go outside of Zetland and create his own business. And also, he doesn't really have any reason to do it because he gets a lot of support from our editors. He really likes, the way that he gets very good when he works at Zetland. So he would have to have a full team helping him if he wanted to leave. Again, like it might be then when we talk a year from now, I have a different perspective because it has happened. But so far it hasn't happened. And so no, we have no, I would say there's no limits to how famous our journalists that I want my journalists to be. They can reach for the stars, please.
You, as we understand here in Slovenia, you're a very special creature of a CEO that is interested in the less is more, because our here CEOs, they don't understand that, as I'm understanding that, especially of the private media and maybe as well in the public as well, that we are producing a lot of content, for example. And how to maybe shift that mentality, because we are living in the era of the instant news, of the ambiental news. Everywhere we are bombarded with some digital sites. How to persuade maybe the owners, the CEOs, that maybe the quality content and the less content is maybe even more valuable than the quantity that we are producing more and more.
It's strange, right? Because it should be the CEOs and the owners who were saying. I mean, for me, it's fairly obvious. We're standing on a mountain of information. What the world needs now, it's not more information, but at the same time, we're kind of in the valley of trust and attention focus. And so what we need is not more, but we need better. And I mean, seriously, a journalist working on a regular, maybe a tabloid or a regular daily in Denmark sometimes have to deliver 3, maybe sometimes even more stories per day. I mean, how can that ever be quality? I don't understand that. You can scrape something and you can put it up, but it's never going to be something that people want to pay for. So for me, I mean, I don't know. I'm not an owner of a legacy newspaper, and I would not want to be that. But I mean, okay, to answer your question, maybe tell them about Zetland and show them our numbers.
More questions, of course.
Do we still have time?
Yeah, okay, a little bit more. Yeah.
Okay. My question is basically more about the community aspect. So, in my opinion, young people are very disassociated and very disconnected from our society. So, bringing them together through news, I think it's a very important thing. So my question is, I saw that you have the comment section on your app.
Contribution section.
Yeah, contribution section. How are the people engaging there? Is there hate speech? Is there...
yeah.
I'm interested in that.
Yeah, so first of all, totally agree. Again, Grundtvig, information, but then community is actually more important, or at least as important. The comment or the contribution section is something that we it's pretty important for us, but it's not something that 80% of our members use. So the thing with that is that it's pretty wonderful to have it, to be able to show, well, you could participate. So there's a few things that we do differently. The first is that we see the contribution section as a part of the article. So for the journalist, the job is not done when you hit publish. I mean, then comes a discussion, and it's sometimes a real discussion. Usually what happens is that we tell the journalist to post the first comment, just saying, welcome to my living room, let's have a conversation about this. And many days, at least, I think usually at least once a day, so in one of the articles, we have one of the sources from the article who has agreed to join the conversation. And I think those two things mean that people are like, so we sometimes say, well, if you get invited into a living room, you don't go over to the corner and piss, right? You kind of behave. But of course, we've all been on Facebook, and that's not a living room. Everybody pisses in the corner on Facebook. But you wouldn't do that, right? When you visited someone and they have kind of asked you inside. Plus, maybe there's a minister who's reading this. Oh, okay, let me just behave. So that's one thing. It's also a walled garden. I mean, you have to pay to be able to contribute, and that also cuts away.
Anonymity? Are you?
You cannot comment anonymous. Well, you can use a false name, but there is a name and there is an image. And actually, we don't. I mean, I'm always over 9 years we probably deleted 10 contributions and blocked 3 users. We don't have any issues, and I don't 100% know why that is, but I think it has something to do with imitation. Like you imitate what what is the feeling here? And if the feeling is let's enlighten each other, well, then people don't act like fools.
Something. Tell me something bad about Zetland. What are your issues, or what are you struggling?
Well, that's two different questions, because we're struggling with a lot of things. We have not figured out how to use video for our members. So that's one thing. We are not young people, so we don't. So the comment section, for instance, think about it. If you're listening to a story, maybe you're on your bicycle. How would you ever get to the comment section? It's so far away, and that means that it's mostly older people, because those are the people who are mostly reading the things. And we have these like 3 people, and they have names like strange old people names, and they will comment every day, and they will write these like novels. And it's like now we're actually just blocking them. And we were writing to them and say, "You're Vaughn, we love you, but could you please a little less, please?" I mean, there's all sorts of problems, and again, Denmark is such a small market that we are not, even though we are profitable, we're not paying our staff enough. I would like to double their salaries. I mean, all sorts of problems. But I think, you know, I'm just proud of being able to play a small part in showing some kind of path of something that actually works, where you can see that, okay, people are actually paying, and they actually continue to pay month after month.
Last question.
Yeah, well, you said that you don't want to make people cry. We don't either.
Well, I actually corrected myself, because it's one of our user needs.
Yeah, I want to know, how do you say something optimistic about what's going on in Gaza, in Ukraine? How do you do that?
Well, sometimes it's not about saying something optimistic. It's about. Well, try Zetland. It's no. We actually have we have 6 user needs, and one of them is make me laugh or cry, and it's not. So we actually like, your emotions are great. Anger is not a great emotion. I mean, it is for Facebook, but it's not constructive. But for instance, tears or personal relationship can actually be a pretty constructive feeling. So if you tell stories about, we told, for instance, the story about the Palestinian or the Hamas negotiator and the Israeli negotiator, and how they've actually had a relationship built up over 5 years, and we got access to the SMSs. And so building like this personal relationship to understanding really how that negotiation happens between Israel and Hamas was actually really something that made me, you know, okay, well, I kind of sympathize with this. I understand what the crazy thing that they're trying to tackle. These 2 human beings that kind of feel the weight of the world on their shoulders. So that's an example of a personal story that's actually pretty hopeful, because I can feel that these people are really trying to solve the conflict. They're not succeeding, but they're really trying.
We have to conclude. Thank you, Tav. We could talk for many hours and days maybe. It's a really, really inspiring story about the media, which is quite maybe sometimes too good to be true, actually. And I'm still thinking about how would that how would that work in Slovenia. Thank you for being a guest at the festival Naprej Forward, and thank you for visiting us. And we are continuing in 10-15 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks for your attention.